STHOCAU&NC Episode 4 Family Trip. A Sonic the Hedgehog, OC, and non-canon and alternate universe fanfic. It's been 7 years now, and Fantasee is 13 years old in the 7th grade at Mobian Middle School. Along with her friends, while her auntie, her Sally, has aged to 33 years old. March has just ended, and it's now April 1st on a Saturday with spring break that has just begun yesterday. Sally and Fantasee has started their own family trip to Lukiwi Forest that is just a few miles of a drive outside of the estate of or kingdom of Mobius. They both arrived that night and set up camp into a log cabin just in case it rains. Sally was planning on doing a camping trip from where they set up tents and sleep in them and all for the outdoor experience more, but due to the weather changing from being a nice little breeze with warm overcast weather to light rain with some thunderstorms. It's 9 a.m. in the morning and both Sally and Fantasee just finished having breakfast together and decided to go outside onto the porch of the front of the cabin. The weather is looking nice with the grass still sparkling from some fresh rain last night and it being a bit cold out. Hey Auntie, what are our plans going to be for today out in the wilderness? Fantasee said as she is holding her grape soda drink of Mobian energy. Sally then replied to her and said with a smile, "We are going to go to the lake and see if we can catch some fish and go hiking on the trail to see some wonderful landscapes here and there along with going to the overlook point of the forest." Fantasee then got excited for the fun events for today that Sally has in mind as she always liked exploring, but she has not gone fishing before in her life. Sally saw the excited look on her niece's face and began to smile even more. A few minutes later, both Sally and Fantasee went back inside to go clean up the table in the kitchen a bit and gather the fishing equipment and head on out onto the lake, the trail, heading towards the lake, which is 10 minutes away. While on the trail towards the lake with Fantasee the Hedgehog on her phone, texting her friends a bit in her right hand with her fishing pole in her left hand while walking. Sally began to remember that night from a long time ago when her niece was in kindergarten on her first day of it. One of the creeps that was talking to her at the fitness gym that she signed up for broke into her castle and snuck past the guards somehow. It was all extremely creepy and scary. However, the weird part was that she woke up to a sound of a body hitting the floor in her doorway to her bedroom, with Fantasee right behind the creep's body on the other side of the doorway. She did check the guy's pulse to see if he is still alive, which he is, but knocked out unconscious while comforting and checking on Fantasee. The next morning around 10 a.m., the guy woke up with a sweat and a high surge of adrenaline from his heart rate being at 150 to 175 while screaming at the top of his lungs as if he saw or went through something very horrific and traumatizing. At first, she didn't care about the creep at the hospital, but waking up and screaming like that is a little concerning since she has a feeling that maybe Fantasee did something to the creep that caused him to go into a full-on panic like that. She never saw a baseball bat or any blunt object she used to knock him out too. However, she did review the cameras and discovered that she used some kind of power or magic to knock him out like that. Sally is extremely happy that her own niece protected her, but she couldn't shake the thought that Fantasee has powers or magic of some sort. Almost like if her adopted niece is an alien or something else entirely deep inside that maybe Fantasee doesn't know or understand about either too. What matters to Sally the most is that she's still very happy that she that she adopted her and started calling and having her as a niece, since she knows how wonderful, kind, and nice she is. When both Sally and Fantasy arrived at the lake, Fantasy put her phone away and waited for her auntie's instructions on how to fish, since this is her first time fishing. While she waits, she saw that there are two men on a boat out in the middle of the lake fishing. They appear to be focused, but at the same time, they look like they are getting frustrated by trying to catch fish in their area, but haven't gotten any luck on getting a single one. Alright, Fantasy, let me show you how to fish, dear. Fantasy then turned to her aunt as Sally said her name. She began to watch closely on how to fish as Sally borrowed her fishing pole and told her what to do and not do when fishing. When Sally got the bait onto the far surface to where it floated, she then gave the fishing pole back to her niece, and as Fantasy grabbed it and chuckled to see how easy it looks to finish, while Sally grabs her fishing pole and started fishing too. As 30 minutes have passed and it's around 10 a.m., they both haven't had any luck catching fish, and Fantasy was starting to get a bit bored when her line started to move from a fish taking the bait and being hooked. Auntie, I hooked one. I got a fish. I took the bait. As Fantasy said in excitement as she tries wheeling the fish along with Sally getting up and coming over to help her wheel the fish in. After wheeling the fish in, Sally and Fantasy both took a look at the fish, only to find out it's a trout. That's a great first catch, Fantasy. You just caught a trout, said Sally as she is happy and proud of her niece's very first catch. Thank you, Auntie. You're welcome, dear. Sorry. You're welcome, Fantasy. Though that there are bigger fish of each kind from different sizes and looks too. Sally didn't heard that there is a 50-pound rainbow trout that Laukies and other people outside Lukiwi can catch too. With the fish being extremely heavy and the reward set at $10,000 to $50,000, depending on how intact the fish is below the head, as long as it's not blown up or missing chunks of its body or shot too. She doesn't really care about the reward in the 50-pound fish, as Sally only cares about both her and spending time with Fantasy on this wonderful trip that they are on together and having fun. After a few minutes have passed after catching two more fish, Sally has caught one fish and Fantasy has caught two. They both then started to pack up and put their fish in the cooler when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they heard a very loud boom from the lake behind them, which scared Fantasy and startled Sally. They both looked back onto the lake from the source of the sound when Fantasy ran behind Sally to hide behind her so Sally can protect her from the danger. When they both found out it's the two boys out in the middle of the lake lighting dynamite and releasing the pins on grenades from their boat and chucking them into the water away from them. Woo-wee! This is more fun than normal fishing, Clyde. You said it, Jeb. The two friends said to each other, shouting in excitement. Sally, with an annoyed and mad expression, then shouted across the lake to the two fishermen who are tossing explosives in the lake, hurting the wildlife and more underneath the water. Hey, You're not supposed to fish like that at all. And the last time I checked, it's illegal to explosive fish in the Lukiwi Kingdom. We don't care. If you can't catch them by a fishing rod, why not use explosives to catch them that way? Exactly. Also, we don't care that much about the wildlife in the lake. What matters the most is that we are going to eat good grub tonight. They both decided in return to replying to Sally earlier across the lake. Sally thought about getting into an argument with them in order to convince them and prove her point, but she didn't want to get into an argument with them didn't want to get into an argument with her niece around, as this is her spring break and Sally's vacation from her princess duties. They both decided to get their things and head back to the cabin in order to rest for a bit and head up to the Nature Reserve Community Center on the hill overlooking the lake. Fantasy didn't ask her a question asking, "Auntie, why are they fishing with explosives?" They just aren't being very patient on catching fish, and they are just taking the sore loser route. After putting their fishing supplies away and the fish that they caught on the table to put in the freezer, as Sally was making room in the freezer and Fantasy is sealing the smelly fish up in a big plastic bag in order to keep the fish from sticking to the freezer on the inside. They both then heard the radio turn to the news after a break from the music. "Good morning, Lukiwi. I heard that spring break has just started yesterday and that there is some exciting events going on for children that's still in middle school or to teenagers trying to start a crazy rave party on the beach. I heard that the Nature Reserve Community Center is holding a fun event to where anyone can watch one of our community's most well-known animal keepers and forest rangers to showcase animals publicly that are tame, calm by hand. The best part is that you get to pet some of the animals too. It starts in about an hour now, and you best get to the Nature Reserve Community Center while there is still time for each showcase of the show. It's about 45 minutes to an hour long." After hearing this from the radio, they both then got their shoes back on and headed out the door for the fun event that's 20 minutes away from their cabin, since they got back for a few minutes, though they also forgot to put the fish in the freezer. When they got near the lake again, they heard the loud booms of the explosions in the lake again while they walked around to head up the trail leading to the Nature Reserve Community Center. They spotted a 19-foot male crocodile hanging outside of the water, looking extremely angry at the two individuals on the lake that's causing a disturbance in the aquatic nature. Both Sally and Fantasy, holding hands, went around the crocodile by not wanting to anger it more by going 15 to 20 feet away from the animal back onto the trail. With Fantasy holding her aunt's hand from her right hand and looking around nature while walking, Sally is holding Fantasy's hand with her left while she's texting the princess of Lukiwi about the two people explosive fishing on a lake in order to catch fish here and there. So he's basically reporting them, so yeah. Well, on the trail up along the way, both of them have spotted a mother grizzly bear and her two cubs following their mom from 30 yards away. Heading towards the way from where both Fantasy and Sally Acorn are walking from, Sally then brought her niece behind a huge tree log that has fallen down a long time ago now in order to hide from the bear and let her and her cubs pass by. However, the mother bear has stopped and picked up their scent from the left side from the other side of the log, while both Sally and Fantasy are staying extremely quiet and not making a sound. While the mother bear It is very slowly sneaking to the left side of the log to peek around the other side of the log. Both Fantasy and Sally slowly sneak to the right side in case they need to make a break for it, as they also peek around the corner to see the other side, of the rock and see the two cubs following their mother slowly. Fantasy that saw that one of the log could see the two. There's some errors in there. Sorry about that. Fantasy saw that one of the cubs walked over a small stone flat rock that's a bit round and stopping into the side of the rock and stepping in on the side of the rock. Fantasy then got an idea and used her telekinesis to pick up a very small rock. Her Aunt Sally was about to stop her until then the Fantasy launched the rock, hitting a stone rock aside from where one of the bear cubs are standing, and it hit hard that it clanked and loud and bounced off the rock a bit to scare the poor little cub. After that happened, the mother bear then got alerted to her startled cub and next roared before ran off in the direction from where Fantasy and Sally walked from. The bear cubs also then began to run off in the same direction towards their mother in order to keep up with her. After a few minutes have passed to make sure that the mother bear and cubs have completely left the area, Sally then turned to Fantasy while Fantasy did the same, holding each other's hands. Fantasy, I wasn't sure what you were doing there with your powers for a second there, but I'm very glad that you didn't hurt or injure the mother bear or the cubs. I understand that you're also trying to figure out who you are, that too, and that we are going to have to test lab results sometime this month. But please promise your aunt that you wouldn't use your powers for evil, that you only use them for the dire need emergencies or when you're in complete danger. Alright? Sally said to her niece in a little worried and concerned voice as Fantasy shook her head up and down, acknowledging and understanding her aunt. You may also use your powers to help people who are in danger too, along with those emergencies, but please try to keep it a secret and not let people know, okay? Yes, Auntie. Fantasy said, responding to her auntie while also being shook up from the situation a few minutes ago. They both then embraced and hugged each other closely and a bit tightly too for 30 seconds before continuing their walk up the trail to the Nature Reserve Community Center. Once they both got to the Nature Reserve Community Center, both Sally and Fantasy took a seat on the bench that overlooks and shows the entire lake almost. As they both have then got a bit distracted at the amazing view, Sally then snapped out of it and felt her tummy growl, along with Fantasy's, indicating that they are both hungry. Hey, Auntie, is there a snack machine or food stand nearby of any kind or something like that? Before Sally can respond to her niece, a memory came back to her about how the Nature Center has a cafeteria that only serves breakfast and lunch during the hours inside, and that they can order their food and bring it outside to eat if they want. Yes, there is. Let's go inside and order. Do you want to eat outside or inside, by the way, Fantasy? Inside will be okay, Auntie. Sounds good. Let's go inside then. I heard that this place is serving soft drinks and some other special meals on the menu too every day. Let's go see what they have, she said while she reaches out to hold her niece's hand as she smiles at her and Fantasy smiles back at her too. They both then went inside and ordered their food. Sally then got a text message from the test lab results on Fantasy, but she decided to take a look at them later since she just wants to eat and calm down more from the situation earlier with the bear mother and cubs. 30 minutes later, they both left the building to hang out for a few minutes to look at the nature more around them while they wait for the second animal showcase show to start. That's in about 20 minutes before it starts. Both noticed the two explosive fishers this morning that started the dock with a huge leather bag of fish, as both Sally and Fantasy didn't got annoyed looks on their faces. They both observed the two walking off docks as they noticed something behind them on the lake trail. It was the mother bear and her two cubs from earlier. After a few seconds of them staring at each other from a few yards away from one another, one of the guys then took out a dead fish from their leather bag. I have a bad feeling something might happen that will get them in trouble with Mama Bear, Sally said in a whisper as both of them saw the guy throw a fish that scared one of the cubs from the ground impact that then angered the mother bear and started chasing the two as they left their bag of dead fish behind, and the cubs grabbed the fish with their mouths and ran after their mother to keep up with her from going after the two guys. Both Sally and Fantasy then laughed nervously as they both are happy that justice for the fish and aquatic life in the lake has been served for some payback with nature on land, but at the same time, they hope that they escape the grizzly bear mom alive and okay though. They both then got a bit worried, and Fantasy then said to her and auntie, I know that they ruined ours fishing plans today, but I hope, along with ours, but I hope they make it out alive and okay from the angry mama bear. Me too, Fantasy. Let's just go inside and wait since it's about almost time for the second animal showcasing show inside, Sally said in a nervous and worried voice as they both then went back inside the Nature Reserve's Community Center, finished watching the animal showcasing show, looked at the art and other cool stuff inside along with some fun events until it reached 5 p.m. They then got a ride from one of the park rangers in a Jeep buggy to their cabin to make it much more safe and easy for the two beautiful ladies. They also had pizza for the rest of the night since the fish went bad.